asks his brother to get him a gun. I'm sorry, the kid has mental problems. He's a minor. He's been in and out of mental health facilities, and you're going to give him a gun? I don't believe that's how he got the gun. I think I know how he got it, but I'll fit that into the narrative in a little bit. He gets a gun, hops back on a bus from Tucson to LA, and that is the day that he goes and shows up at Rebecca's apartment. Now, I think we can look at the charts now because there's a lot in there that fits into the rest of the story. The Robert Rebecca chart and the chart of Rebecca's shooting.
There we go.
That's their pictures. Yeah, here we go. The one on the left is what I did was combine into what we call a biwheel, the charts, the birth charts of Robert and Rebecca. And I'll just make one quick plug about relationship astrology. It doesn't impact me because I don't do clients readings, but it is a tool used in astrology that tells people, what their connections are, how their energies work best, how they fit emotionally as a couple or as a working colleague, a business partner, a neighbor. And it is something that some astrologers practice for a living. It's called relationship astrology or synastry, synastry. It's extremely effective. And I did this to see what was going on with the energy between Robert and Rebecca, because obviously he had this death grip of attraction for her. And she was kind of, I guess, in the beginning apathetic, but then the day that he shot her, she had gotten angry at him because he had called her twice. He went to her house twice. Anyway, and it's borne out really perfectly here because he is a Capricorn and he has connections. She is a Scorpio, but she has Capricorn Venus. No, he has Capricorn Venus. He has a Capricorn Mars. There's a Mars-Venus connection in Capricorn that drives this whole thing because it's based on sexual attraction. So that's the bottom left black circle. That's the Capricorn connection, and also his sun and his Venus in Capricorn. And her Mars sort of sets him off. That's a sign of attraction, but it doesn't mean it's a happy relationship. You have to look at the rest of the things, which in her case are really tragically deadly. And I have to say they are matched up to the degree, which is really powerful energy at work. In astrology, if something is maybe 6-7 degrees away from a geometric angle to another planet, it still operates, it still has an effect. In this case, they're all dead on top of each other. They're like 27 matches to 27. She has aspects of being stalked. She has danger aspects in her natal chart. And Robert's planet of annihilation is exactly on those planets. It's exactly on her Venus. So it's really, and I'm talking about the red circle in the upper left corner. There's a clump of planets there. In a way, there was no getting out of this for her. This was definitely fated, and she wasn't going to escape that day. These were really dangerous aspects, and they were extremely powerful because they were exactly on the same degree. Then there's a line going across the middle, like right across the horizon. And that's telling me he is very susceptible to psychic programming, and relates to, it also manifests in problems in relationships, which that's an understatement. I mean, he kills the girl. So that matches up with her as well in her chart, his tendency to be addicted to a person and then want to annihilate them because he can't have them. So that plays out in the horoscope. And also on the day of the shooting, I'm moving on to the second one, which is all red circles and lines. Day of the shooting, if somebody planned this, they could not have picked a better time. And that was what made me start wondering about, this possibly was a ritual. I believe he was programmed. He had the intent and the affection for her, but I still think there was some programming because of some other things that were going on.
You know,
Anyway,
his name matches priest. John
oh,
Barber.
wow.
Yeah.
Well, that. You know what's weird about that? What he also has in his birth chart, he has 3 planets in the 12th house. The 12th house rules a lot of things, but confinement, institutions, including mental facilities, hospitals. It rules witchcraft. It rules psychic programming. It rules paranormal. He's got 3 strong placements in that house.
And
So he's very susceptible to all of that. And he actually ends up going from a mental facility at one point in his life to prison for his whole life. He's in the 12th house for the rest of his life. He's in prison. But he was susceptible to it. And he also has a feature which Mars at 13 Pisces is called the witchcraft degree. You are either involved in it or you are subjected to it in some way. I'm not saying it's definite. It's a potential for that could happen to people. With all the other stuff he has going on, somehow he got pulled into some sort of, I believe, psychic entrapment. And he was ripe for that. He had been in a mental facility, which is, I think, once people got away from the trope of the lone gunman nut, they started realizing, oh, we can use people who have mental problems and they can carry out assassinations as well. Because the lone gunman trope was used up in the 60s and they were getting tired of it. They wanted to find something else. And picking people with, weak mentality or mental problems, history of schizophrenia, so forth, it's a prime location to do it. They're in a mental facility where doctors have access to them 24/7. It's hard to get their records. They're guarded by privacy laws. You can't see what's being done with them. You can't see what kind of drugs they're getting or what kind of treatment or who they're seeing. And finally, you have doctor-patient confidentiality. So shrinks are not going to tell what the patient tells them. So I'm not saying this happens to everybody, obviously, but it is a pattern, and I think is followed in finding suitable Manchurian candidates. Because then you can have a murder or a mass shooting, and you can say, well, the guy was schizophrenic, he lost his mind, case closed. He shot himself, or he was shot by police, case closed. So Robert was falling into this pattern where this could easily have been something that happened. And because of other things that, now I'll go back to the crime scene and talk about. There were things about the crime scene that really didn't smell right to me. And there's something in Rebecca's chart that was very weird. And it came out on the day of her death as one of the leading contributors to her death. She had a retrograde Mercury, and that means, and it was in Scorpio, so that means she was a very ambitious young lady. She was very, very pretty, very personable, and well-liked, but she was ambitious. She moved to New York when she was like 18 years old, all by herself from Oregon to pursue a career. Now, that's kind of hard to do, but she was determined to do it, and then she ended up going out to LA and getting the job. She was only 21 when she died, so she was a working actress before she even turned 20. And so she was quite a determined young lady. And yet with the Mercury retrograde, she was a little bit of a loner. She did not really communicate her feelings well. Mercury retrograde means the planet isn't functioning properly. It's held up somehow. So Mercury retrograde referred to her communication, but in a really eerie way. It referred to her communications devices, and I'll tell you why. On the day of the murder, and this I have trouble believing. I couldn't get more information on this, but supposedly Rebecca, being a working actress, had no telephone. And I find that absolutely ridiculous. That's your lifeblood to getting calls from casting agents, from your agent, from anybody that may have an interest in having you in some sort of production. And then another source said her phone wasn't working, which is even more suspicious. Why is her phone not working? Because she didn't have enough money. Well, she had just done a TV series and 2 movies. Her parents were well off. They lived in Oregon. I'm sure they would have helped her pay the phone bill if that was really the case. So I don't know what was going on with that, but it's weird because it's in her birth chart and she has no phone. She has a problem with communications. Maybe it was something happened to the phone so that she couldn't call for help when Robert started buzzing her from on the intercom. I don't know. The other problem is that the intercom itself did not work. It would ring, but it didn't. The microphone didn't work. In other words, she lived on the second floor of her building, and she had to, when the buzzer rang, instead of asking who it was, she had to go downstairs to see who it was. I think that's very suspicious. It forced her to go downstairs and see him, and therefore that's how she was killed, because she had to open the door to him.
It almost sounds like it's just a convenient story, too.
Yeah, I just don't buy the whole thing. And
well, Scapegoat even matches his name, too.
what does?
Scapegoat.
Oh.
You know what? Something I wanted to say, too, I just happened to notice it because, like, I knew something I was looking at before showed High Priestess, which I thought was interesting. Catcher in the Rye matches High Priestess, and his name matches Priest.
Mm-hmm.
He even matches the sun, and if I think the other one was matching something on tarot, too. Just very interesting. And he even matches Gladiator, which I find interesting because this is in simple English of the value of 87. And I could see kind of Travis Kelce, in a sense, you know, being somebody surrounded in this thing that's getting people's attention.
Yeah.
You know, and then Cookie Monster matches John Bardo, and, you know, we got fucking all of a sudden Biden's bringing up Cookie Monster. I'm seeing it's just weird things matching these that I'm like, I could see this being today. Very weird.
Oh yeah.
Petey, by chance, was there any reference as to what facility that he was sent to for psychiatric assistance or help?
No, but they were.
I know it was in California, right, or something.
No, he was living in Tucson.
In Tucson, sorry, yes, Tucson.
Right. I don't know that. It was very sketchy. It was very sketchy information. And what was there was conflicting. Somebody said she had no phone, which is ridiculous, or the phone wasn't working, which is equally ridiculous for a working actress. The biggest thing, that happens. Okay, I'll throw this in on the side. He goes to her house. First, he's walking around the neighborhood real early in the morning, and he's showing her photograph to people in the street. Do you know this girl? Do you know this girl? I don't know why he did that. He had her address. He knew where she lived. He found it, but he's showing her photograph as if to make witnesses out of these people who can then say, this guy showed me Rebecca's photograph, and he was looking for her before she was shot. It was ridiculous. Anyway, he goes to her apartment it was around 9 a.m. the first time, and he rings the bell, and she can't get the intercom, so she comes downstairs. And he's like, just wants to say hi and how much he admires her and all that. And I guess she's polite, but then he leaves. And he goes out and has breakfast. This to me is really suspicious. He had the gun with him already. If you were going to shoot her, do it the first time. Why are you leaving? Where are you going? Who are you meeting? And why are you coming back? Are you going to confirm that the target is available? Are you going to pick up a gun because the target is available? All that goes through my mind. And he goes to have breakfast, and then he comes back. He comes back at 10:15 a.m., which is 1:15, which is Black Dahlia's death day and number. Maybe nothing, but I noticed stuff like that. I have to say it. He comes back at 10:15. And she opens the door, and she's annoyed. She's like, what are you doing here again? He shoots her in the chest, bang, and she dies. Now, a witness hears 2 shots. Robert said he fired 1 shot. She is hit with only 1 bullet. I don't know where the other shot was. I don't know where it came from or where it ended up. The witness heard 2 shots. So I'm wondering if when he went to breakfast, he was going and checking out a handler or somebody who was then directing him, here's what you do next, and here's the gun.
Yeah.
What happens then, this is my speculation, but it just seems to make more sense than the original story. He then Oh, here's the big thing that bothered me. She answers the door both times in wearing a black bathrobe. She supposedly, by all accounts, she had an appointment to read for a part in The Godfather Part 3 to play Mary Corleone, Michael Corleone's daughter. She was going to read for that part at 11 o'clock, interesting number. 11 o'clock that morning, she used to be in Universal Studios reading for the part of Mary Corleone. Now, it's 10:15 in the morning, you have an appointment at 11 with Francis Ford Coppola. What are you doing in your bathrobe at 10:15? You should have your makeup on. You should be dressed. I mean, I would be there by 10:30 just to be on the safe side. This is an appointment of her lifetime. She's wearing a black bathrobe and she's nowhere close to being dressed, and she has 45 minutes, and it's in LA where the traffic is horrendous. And she's not ready in any way for this appointment that she supposedly had at 11 o'clock in the morning to read for the role of Mary Corleone, who ends up in the movie being shot in front of a church. Rebecca's shot in front of her apartment building. Mary Corleone shot in front of a church. That's the part she was going to read for. If that is in fact accurate. But that's what all the sources say. She was going to go for this part, and he was annoying her because she was trying to get ready. But with 45 minutes to go, you're still in your bathrobe? I don't get it, especially in LA. You need to be already out the door to get there on time. You have to go to the studio. You have to be signed in. You have to be checked in with the appropriate, security personnel. It just made no sense that she had this audition supposedly. So that stirred my curiosity. Anyway, Robert shoots her and he runs away. While he's running away, he had this bag of things with him. He had pictures of her in the bag, and he supposedly had the revolver in the bag. And in the bag, he has a copy of The Catcher in the Rye, which he throws on the roof of the building while he's running, throws it up on the roof of the building. And he escapes, gets back to Tucson, but is then seen running around in the middle of the I-10 freeway where people drive like 90 miles an hour. And the police pick him up. He tells them, I did the shooting in LA of Rebecca Schaeffer, and that's the end of that. He has a bench trial where he pleads insanity, and the prosecuting attorney is Marcia Clark, who we know from the O.J. Simpson shady trial. These people run in the same circles all the time. So the prosecutor is Marcia Clark. Of course, he's found guilty, but during the trial, he gives evidence, I think the clearest evidence of being an MK Ultra victim, and that is that he blames his mental infirmity on a song. The words to the song. This is a song called Exit by U2, the band U2. It was not a session song. It actually was a session song. They did a jam session, and this song came out of that jam session. It wasn't a song that somebody sat down and wrote and produced and arranged the music for. And Bono, the lead singer, who is really sus in terms of, I think, Luciferian practices, from what I hear,
he's definitely
would
sus,
work himself up into a frenzy to do this song. So this is the song that Robert claims caused him or affected him to the point where he went and shot Rebecca Schaeffer. Here's the song. You know he got the cure. You know he went astray. He used to stay awake to drive the dreams he had away. He wanted to believe in the hands of love, hands of love. His head, it felt heavy as he came across the land. Dogs started crying, howling wind in the howling wind. He went deeper into black, deeper into white. He sees the stars shine like nails in the night. He felt healing, healing, healing hands of love like stars shining from above, which are the nails, okay? It's crazy. His hand in his pocket, his finger on the steel. The pistol weighed heavy. His heart he could feel was beating, 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 beating. Oh, my love, my love, my love, my love. So hands that build can also pull down, even the hands of love, even the hands of love. And that's about somebody who loves somebody so much that they pull out a gun and shoot them. And that's what Robert claims he was influenced by, which kind of makes sense. And when they played this song in court, he was trembling like somebody under a spell. He was like shaking and trembling like uncontrollably when the song was played in court. So, of course, he was found guilty. They didn't buy the insanity defense, even though Park Dietz, who was a very well-known forensic psychiatrist, testified that he was schizophrenic and he should have been put in a facility to help him. And so Robert's now in prison for life. And I listened to an interview that he gave, and he said he was in total remorse. He doesn't know why he did it. There were reasons fashioned about why he did it. Like, oh, she was a phony. She was a phony because she was a good girl, and then she starred in a movie where she went to bed with a guy, and she's not a good girl anymore. And that made him angry, and it made him angry that she had spurned him, his advances. And this phony thing was also what they used that Mark David Chapman applied to John Lennon. John Lennon was a phony. John Lennon was a phony. Mark David Chapman had no concern about John Lennon whatsoever. That was a part of the construct, and that was a part of the construct of what was said about Robert as well. So that's the story of where he ends up now. But he's filled with remorse. He can't believe he did it. He doesn't know why. All he says is, "I hope that young men learn how to cope with their emotions because I couldn't. I couldn't cope with my emotions, and I did something horrible." And it's really kind of tragic the way he spoke of it. But
didn't he also say that because of seeing her? You might have said it before, and I was looking at the gematria. I think I had read somewhere that because of, like, I think her kissing somebody on some, I think, like, soap opera that she might have been in or something like that, some daytime show.
Yeah, he
also
saw her do that.
him.
Yes, he did see her do that on a soap opera, and it upset him.
Yes.
But,
that was part of sending him out to
yeah,
kill.
I mean, but I think, yeah, I want to get back to the charts a little bit.
Oh, real quick, too. What were you saying with Catcher in the Rye again? What was that associated with? What type of, I guess, killings did you say before? I think you mentioned but something with Yoko Ono, and then, like, somebody else had Catcher. Like, they had the books with them, correct?
Oh, Mark David Chapman and John Hinckley, who shot Reagan, President Reagan.
And so did Lee Harvey Oswald as well.
Wait, say John Hinckley?
John
Really?
Hinckley, yeah, who shot Reagan, the guy that shot Reagan in New York, in Washington, D.C.
Was he a junior?
Yes, his father is a very good friend of the Bush family, and when we do that show, I have a bloodline list of his, which is like this long. He's descended from all kinds of huge bloodlines in Europe. The Hinckley family is extremely well appointed.
Catcher in the Rye equals 162 in simple, and that matches John Hinckley Jr.
Mm-hmm.
And it does also match, which I thought was interesting, Robert F. Kennedy. He was shot too.
Well, Lee Harvey Oswald had a copy of Catcher in the Rye.
That I did not know.
Yeah, he had it back at his apartment.
Well, this gets deeper and deeper, doesn't it?
Yeah.
That is bizarre.
And again, the whole premise of Catcher in the Rye is that the person who wrote it or the actual publisher had embedded neurolinguistic programming into the text that would supposedly activate something because they were forced to read it during MK Ultra over and over and over. That was a whole that was a whole folklore behind Catcher in the Rye.
It was folklore, or it could be
lore.
It was
folklore.
Documented. It was folklore.
It was okay. From what I read, it was folklore.
Okay, because I didn't come across that. Not that it doesn't,
Right, and then to your point about Dietz, the psychiatrist, he was the one that was asked by name by Ghislaine Maxwell to testify in her case for the defense. Mm-hmm. And then he also testified as well as in the John Hinckley case, as well as Ted Kaczynski. And he was the one that provided the actual written oral opinion to Janet Reno to go ahead and go in to, do the assault on Waco. Yeah, and Elizabeth Loftus is part of his associates
Of course.
in whatever. So
yeah, they run in the same circles, don't they?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Elizabeth Loftus is part of his associates
Of course.
in whatever. So
yeah, they run in the same circles, don't they?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. Which I will say that he apparently has like FBI, like retired FBI, on his associates panel as well as expert witnesses under his firm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me at all.
Yeah. It's just odd that he would be there testifying at Robert Bardot's trial of all people.
Yeah. And it was to help get him off, not really get him off, but committed to a mental facility.
Right. Like, I mean, pretty much navigating for his path where he was going to end up.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
It didn't work that time though. But anyway, here we get to the gematria, which was really was the main thing that sucked me right into this case, because I just kept hitting 44, 44, 44. So I'll go over these. Bardot's born January 2, 1970, 102 is Manchurian. Rebecca Lucille Schaeffer was born 11/6, 116 equals Manchurian candidate. Now, this is what freaks me out because it keeps going. The distance between their birthdays, January 2nd and November 6th, is exactly 44 weeks. Rebecca codes to 44, as does Schaeffer. Patty Russell codes to 44. My sister Sam codes to 44. TV stars 44. Hypnosis and Brain are 44. And then if you want to go to the next one, the music of the song Exit. Well, music is played at 440 hertz, which is really not the beneficial frequency for that kind of thing, but it's 44. Exit is a 22. This is all multiples of 11, and I got tons of them. I got 55s, I got 77s. I could have kept going with this list. Now, the weird thing is my sister Sam had 44 episodes, 22 in each season, each of 2 seasons. Episode 11 of season 2, which is actually episode 33 in the totality of seasons, was My Party and I'll Kill If I Want To, and that coded to 404, which is 44. And that's probably Bardot's I'll Kill Her If I Want To, it's my thing. Episode 11 codes to 127, which is his birthday, 1270. Her name codes to 127 and 170, as does Handler codes to 127. And I just do English ordinal. I don't, because Nick, you're so good at the Hebrew and the other. I just leave it. I leave it to you. This is English ordinal. And then the next one, Bardot's 22, and the Bardot is 44. Now the number 187 is interesting. I just saw it on something else this morning too. It's the number of the California Penal Code, which refers to murder. And cops will say we got a 187, and they're talking about somebody just was killed. My sister Sam was on the air for a period of 18 months and 7 days. It was 187. The murder date outside the U.S., when they put the day before the month, it's 187. It's the date of the murder. Demonic Songs codes to 187. And Rebecca was murdered 66 weeks and 1 day following cancellation of the show.
Okay.
Interesting.
And we also get Edwards Air Force Base, where he was born, as 187. Dissociation is 187. And then the 49 days in the Bardot, with all the 7s that were so critical in that. Television, Stalker, and Samantha code to 49. And I said already, the number 7 is prevalent in Book of the Dead, and he was the 7th of 7 children.
Even I hate to say it, just Edwards Air Force Base makes me wonder.
Yeah.
Well, also that Mark David Chapman's father was Air Force.
Yes. And wasn't he a non-commissioned officer, which means that he had some sort of education? He didn't go in through boot camp. So it almost makes you wonder, what was his education in?
Well, when he left the Air Force, he went first into the oil business because they were in Fort Worth, and then he went into banking in Atlanta. He had an education for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Don't know what in. Take a guess, but anyway, I want to go on back to the charts for a minute because we have talked about the theme of the bardo and where you are symbolically dead, and you have this chance to ascend or descend, so to speak. And going back to the charts, if here we go. What drives this whole thing is the symbology of Capricorn, and we saw Capricorn in the Idaho 4 case, ruling big business, government, powerful agencies. I also want to add here that there's a lot more to it. It's that fit the Idaho 4. In this case, Capricorn, the symbol is the goat, okay? And the goat has a tremendous symbology behind it. And some things really interesting. The goat it's a mountain goat, basically. And if you think about the mountain goat and how it lives, it climbs the mountains and they will take incredibly tiny paths and put one hoof after the other and just go up the mountain in spite of how treacherous it is or how dangerous it is. I mean, one false footing and you're gone. So Capricorn is a very driven sign. It's very ambitious. They want to achieve, they want status. They want the peak of the mountain. That's where the goat is headed. He's climbing up, going over stones and all kinds of things in the way of his path, and his goal is to reach the top. Or he can crash. And that in the symbology of the goat, Nick, do you have the goat picture that I sent you yesterday?
Yeah, you know what? I forgot to put it on a slide. I'd have to pull these down and put it back up. I'm so sorry.
That's all right.
I realized that after the fact.
Oh, no, that's fine. It's the goat symbology is, and here's another thing about the goat that is really kind of funny. Being a horned creature, they believe that the term horny came from goats because male goats were associated with always wanting to fornicate. Male goats, that's all they wanted to do was reproduce, whereas the she goats were more reserved and more, I guess, good little goats. That's Christian mythology for you. But that's where the term comes from, I think, and it does represent lust. Mm-hmm. In charts of different individuals that have like Venus in Capricorn, they may cheat on their partners. It's just a feature of that placement of the planet. And Tiger Woods, for example, was a Capricorn with Venus in Capricorn. We all know he cheated on his wife, he cheated on all his girlfriends. He was pure Venus in Capricorn.
And they would call him the goat for golf, wouldn't they?
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. So the Capricorn is a very lustful sign. It wants power. That's why it's going to climb up this mountain regardless of what's in its way, stones, sticks, branches. It's going to make that climb. But they also have spectacular falls from grace, like no other sign. For example, Richard Nixon was a Capricorn, rose to tremendous power in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, and he was disgraced. He resigned and left office, disgraced. That is a typical Capricornian result. You either deserve what you get at the end, you've worked hard for it and you've earned it, or along the way you cut corners, you gave into temptation, you did a few things wrong and you crashed. And the crashes are usually spectacular ones, like for all to see, like Elvis. Elvis is a Capricorn. I think Nixon and Elvis are actually born on the same day, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, Elvis, as famous as he is now, still may be considered the king of rock and roll, dies on a toilet bowl with a needle in his arm. That's a spectacular fall from grace. And that's the legend of Capricorn. It's, feast or famine, basically. And the symbology of it is a goat with horns, and the top of half of the body is the goat's body. But the lower half of the body is a fishtail. And that represents the fact that the goat either ascends, they reach the pinnacle of success, which is what they work very hard at, or they fall into the abyss of the ocean, like the fish. So it's like one or the other. That's the myth of Capricorn. It's the mythology of Capricorn. And that's how the sign plays out in astrology very often. And Capricorn links Rebecca to Robert because those are the signs that indicate the sexual attraction and the appeal and her sense of ambition and drive and his ambition to want to own her, to want to have her. And actually, on the day of the murder, another reason I think it was set up, it could not have happened at a better time. 2 hours after the murder was a full moon in Capricorn. That played out brilliantly with all the things leading up to that point. It was a culmination of energies. That's what the full moon is. Full moon in Capricorn, it's on the right, the loop going down from left to right. That's your full moon in Capricorn. And that triggered him something fierce. The approach of that energy hitting his Capricorn triggered him, which I think also other things triggered him as well. Mm-hmm. But that was a feature of that shooting. I was like, oh my God, that was really, I don't think that was incidental at all. There were too many things in the pathway. The phone didn't work. The intercom didn't work. She wasn't really going to an audition. I don't know what was going on with that. Yeah. He runs away, but he makes sure that he's dancing on the I-10 freeway, where, of course, if he's not killed, which is maybe what he was trying to do, if he's not killed, he's picked up by the police. And that's the end of that. Case closed. This nut shot her, and it's too bad. But anyway, the result of the stalking, people in Hollywood typically go into panic mode when some stalker kills a star. Of course they do. What happens when someone kills a star? The security business is booming. People want surveillance. They want cameras. They want bodyguards. They want their residences safeguarded with more fences. They want to build panic rooms. It's a big moneymaker when a stalker kills somebody. And I also think it was a way of saying, because Hollywood is really the bed of Lucifer with all the practices that go on there. And often celebrities are taken out either because they're not complying with their contract or they want out or some other thing. I think it was a way of saying, well, you know, if we can get you this way too. You don't listen to us, if you don't bend the knee to us, if you don't fulfill your contract and do everything we want you to do and we tell you to do, a stalker might end up at your house and you might get killed. It introduced a whole different level of fear into the Hollywood community, and people responded. So they made a ton of money off of security gadgets and people and devices, panic rooms, construction, or it was a way of sending a message. We'll get you. This time will be somebody looking through your window.
Way of control.
Yeah. So I think that was a reason for it. And Rebecca Schaeffer being such a young, pretty, innocent girl, it really hurt people. It was really tragic. Everybody knew her from that TV show, and she was so popular and well-liked, and she would probably had a great career. She was only 21 when she died. But there's a crazy guy who got a gun somehow. She's dead. He's in prison. Forget about it, but don't forget to buy your, surveillance cameras and, all your bodyguards, your panic rooms, and what have you. So I think that's what was behind this kind of thing. This was the late 80s. Stalkers were just starting. They were always around. They're always around. They're legitimate ones. They're not always plants or programmed people, so to speak. But they've been around. I mean, since what? Last October, Taylor Swift has been stalked 80 times by the same guy. Give me a break. I think it's just more publicity in her ledger. That's all I think that is. Sometimes it's to get people to feel sorry for you. Yeah. If there's a story about, a stalker's been coming to my house, people feel sorry for you. They want to help you. You get attention. Yes. So there's a lot of angles to this, but I think the type of people that do this are such fertile ground for being programmed to do certain things. They're already psychically very vulnerable. And it's induced by the trauma, like what Robert Bardo went through. And I'm not excusing what he did, but he was broken in a way that somebody could get influence over him fairly easily. And he was in a location where it was very easy to do that. and not have really records of it because of privacy laws. So I think that was probably what was behind it. But I think the main thing, the main symbolism was this massive failure. I mean, in the Bardo, your goal is to gain freedom. You want to break free from the earth plane, which is Maya, which is a magic show in a movie. You want to be free of Maya. You want to gain freedom. He wanted to be free of Rebecca Schaeffer because it was starting to make him miserable. He thought he would be free from her. She was an illusion. She was a TV actress. She was a projection of his fantasy. He wanted to be free of it. And that's what the point of the Bardo is, to go through so many stages of soul development that you can be free from the illusion of Maya and you can evolve as a soul. He was just doing it the exact wrong way. So instead of ascending, he crashes into the abyss. Rebecca, for all her ambition, gets caught up in a terrible situation that she can't control. She falls into the abyss because she's murdered. It's a story of the Capricorn ascension, the Bardo ascension, and it fails because it's misused. And that's what I think the symbology is telling us. It's the story of ambition. He's ambitious for her. She's ambitious for a career. And this is the kind of thing that happens. So I think, yeah.
Petey, I have a question for you. I was reading somewhere, and I don't know the legitimacy of this, but I don't know if it was during trial that he said this or if he said this to his psychiatrist, but that Bardo had indicated that he had said to Rebecca that he wanted to permanently possess her by taking her life, which, speaking to the whole Bardo thing that you brought up with the Buddhism of being free, yet he wanted to encage her. And it just seemed like to me that someone of that age, Bardo's age at the time, and then given that, he kind of did, he was intelligent, but he didn't stick around. Somebody at that age would say something like that or think something like that all on their own to you know what I mean? It almost seems like he picked that up from somewhere. I don't know. It just, and again, I don't know how the validity of that, but it just seemed like something that was maybe impressed upon him.
I think you're right there. I think what I believe he did say to his sister, and his family was very tight-lipped about this. They really didn't give interviews, but somehow his sister, at some point, told someone, he said, "I don't lose."
Yes.
I don't lose. That's Capricorn. They don't lose. They'll climb the tiniest, narrowest, bumpiest little path up the mountain to get where they want to go. They do not want to lose. And so I could see him saying that from that standpoint. But maybe that was part of the programming also. He was very vulnerable with the location of his moon. And he has so much junk in the 12th house. Susceptible to psychic interference and black magic. He's got the black magic degree of his Mars. That's your actions. Mm-hmm. Your actions can be based on that, the hypnotic training. I just think because what he did was he followed the path of Chapman on the morning of the killing, right down to getting the book. They both had pouches with a gun and the book in them. And they both went to the residence of the victim, and then they left and they came back. Both of them did that. Were they going, and like I said before, were they getting instructions? Were they getting the gun that they were going to use? I can't believe for a minute that Bardo's brother got him a gun. That to me is nuts. And it's the same exact gun, Charter Arms 38, 5-shot revolver, same gun, which was also used in Son of Sam. No, I'm sorry. Son of Sam was a Charter Arms 44. There's your 44 again, but it's the Charter Arms. It was, wasn't Hinckley. Somebody else used it. Oh, Arthur Bremer. He's a little-known assassin who tried to assassinate Governor George Wallace when he was running for president against Richard Nixon in '72. Arthur Bremer. He's part of the story. Wait till we get to the next episode, guys. He's part of the story.
And both
something else again. Yeah.
And both Hinckley and Bardo didn't resist arrest. They pretty much said, you know what I mean, like gave up.
take me. Oh,
Yeah.
Chapman stayed there reading The Catcher in the Rye, which
Yeah.
incidentally he didn't have with him when he was on the way to the Dakota. Something prompted him, something or someone prompted him and said, "Oh, you need a copy of Catcher in the Rye." He goes into a bookstore and buys a copy. He didn't have it with him. The book meant nothing to him. He left the copies of it in Hawaii, which he had signed Holden Caulfield, which I think is him. The book meant nothing to him. He left the copies of it in Hawaii, which he had signed Holden Caulfield, which I think is ridiculous how he was made out to impersonate Holden Caulfield, who was the main character in Catcher in the Rye. There's just, like I said, I got so sucked back into Chapman through this case, but it made more sense, even though working backward chronologically. This was 9 years after Chapman. What is Robert John Bardo doing with Catcher in the Rye so many years after Chapman? It's in a pouch that he carried to the murder scene, but he throws it on the roof of the house as he's fleeing. But he puts himself in a position where he's easily arrested. Yeah. And the whole thing reeks. I mean, like I said, I specialize in high weirdness, and there is no lack of it in anything I ever look at. So that's this case to a T. And the astrology is absolutely astounding how tightly enmeshed their energies were. This was karmic. There are karmic indications of this. This is something that she was not going to get out of, but there are karmic indications because of the positions of some of the, for example, the moon's node. Yeah, and then there's moon's nodes indicate karmic placements. And she lines up so badly with him, and she has the aspects of being a victim of stalking, which is really sad. And it hooked right into one of his planets. And just amazing how all of these things were in such an alignment, right to the exact degree. The closer the degree of exactitude, the more forceful the influence is, the harder it is to work around it or work through it.
Something I wanted to ask you, do you think like a lot of times, like something like this, I do think like maybe it was probably done purposely with a lot of this matching stuff. I know before in the past, I have said sometimes I think maybe some stuff just aligns with like some of the weird number stuff or with astrology. But in a scenario like this, do you think sometimes all these like intricate matching things, do you think that's actually part of what captivates the people's attention and even makes it so popular? Which is then where you can start trying to siphon money for things or making money off of stuff. Do you think that helps like add to?
It's a really good question. I think that by virtue of what I've just described about how tightly enmeshed everything was, that it almost had to work out this way. It gives a tremendous power to the event. It's like an explosion of power. I mean, these three things, keep going back to the upper left in the red circle, the three planets there and that one. it's a story of annihilation, almost exactly. You have degrees and then you have minutes of arc. So you have a degree and then there's 60 minutes of arc, and 60 minutes of arc between that degree and the next. It's not only the exact degree, it's the degree and the degree of arc. So here it's what, 2736, and in his it's 2736 or whatever. I'm not seeing it that clearly, but they're exact. That is like you aligned the atoms in the atom masher and they go off, you know what I mean? So it does give power to it, and that is felt psychically by people. They respond to that. We respond to these things because of the power that they release in the interactions between these energies. They release power.
You know, how old was she? I'm sorry again. When she died of her age.
21.
I thought maybe she might have been part of like the 27 club, but like even in this chart on the left, I mean, you have that number 27 just pops up a shit ton of times too.
Yes.
I mean, a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
and that's an interesting number because that is preceding an astrological cycle that is very critical in people's lives, and sometimes people don't survive it. It's one full rotation of Saturn around to the point of your birth. Goes through all the houses, comes back to the point of your birth around the age of between 27 and 30, 28 usually. But 27, you're on the precipice of that return. So that's a critical time. And you can also look at other surrounding planets. Maybe they triggered it early. Maybe there was something else really violent going on that expressed itself at that 27th year. But there are cycles taking place, and they are kind of like, they build up in energy and momentum. And then when they finally reach a point where they hit a critical degree or they touch another planet's degree, that's the manifestation of that energy. And in this case, they were just, I don't want to make a bad pun, dead to rights. They were absolutely spot on the point. As I said, with the full moon in Capricorn on that day, 2 hours after the shooting, I should have checked if it was an eclipse. I meant to check that if it was a lunar eclipse. I wouldn't be surprised if it was a lunar eclipse on that day. But it was, and it put a complete pall over Hollywood. People were freaked out, scared, buying locks for their doors. Even though Barda was apprehended, the psychic damage remains, and that's part of the process. It scares people. It sets people off balance.
That's almost like, I feel like it's almost like mafia tactics.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's like, I really do believe, like, a lot of times, like, in their justification of, like, paying for not having crime on your business. How do you know that the couple of crimes that happened in that area wasn't due to you anyway? You know what I'm saying? So, like, who am I really protecting you from?
A tool. It's a weapon. And it's
I did
tool.
it to make you scared, so then you hire. Or think there's a justification for my protection.
Oh, for sure. Security companies, look how they benefited after 9/11. I bet everybody involved in that had massive amounts of stock in security companies. I never looked into that, but and after mass shootings, this thing about let's restructure the gun laws. No, what do people do after a mass shooting? They want to go out and buy a gun because they want to protect themselves. It drives gun sales. That's really what's going on. It's not about changing gun laws, which is ridiculous. It drives gun sales. That's what happens with that. It drives security, and it makes people afraid. And when people are afraid, they're more psychically vulnerable to bullshit from the government or whatever the messages are being driven into their brain in the aftermath of what happened. So these kind of things, I think, are very often staged. I would say maybe most of them are staged, because also you hear about it. You don't hear about Joe Blow who gets shot, because somebody stalks him or his daughter or whatever. It's a high profile person because it hits the target. And it causes mass grief, which is another benefit, massive amounts of groundswells of grief among people. That's fertile ground for operations. So it all makes sense to me.
And they just hit the American public with a psychic attack with the death of Samantha Samantha Smith by her dying in the plane, and then a few years later you have this happening as well. It was almost
that was a big point. And also, I neglected to mention, get away from the flowers, I'm telling you. Upon her death, they named a dahlia after her.
Oh, wow.
The Samantha Smith dahlia. You can't get away from these flowers. I mean, it just keeps going and going. And I actually found out they named an orchid after Double Fantasy after John Lennon was shot because his last album was Double Fantasy. So they named an orchid Double Fantasy. They named an orchid after Marilyn Monroe when she was murdered. I covered that a while ago. It's just this floral thing just keeps on going. But yeah, I think a lot of this stuff is deliberate. I've gotten to the point where I am very reluctant to believe what I read, which is hard to do research when you feel that way. But I have an instant distrust of primary sources, especially what I went through when I did the Richard Speck investigation. Everything was botched. It was just one story after the next. And so I approach things with, just a very even keeled, let's see where this leads. Let's see what maybe this is supposed to really be telling us. You have to have, 6 eyes in your head to do that kind of research. But anyway, that's the story of Robert John Bardo and Samantha and my sister Sam. So I think it was really a lot of Capricorn stuff, a lot of the Bardo. The Bardo is the same thing as the Capricorn because you're either going to go up or you're going to go down. You're going to evolve to the next level of existence or you're going to be punished. Not hell, but you will be subject to certain things that you have to make up for having done in your lifetime. So I saw a perfect parallel between the astrology and the Buddhism with that. And I believe they do come from the same source anyway, going way back. Oh yeah, the stalking laws were interesting. I might actually have that. The way it was worded, I might actually have it.
I do have to say, I'm kind of, I really didn't look at any of the numbers until we, came on now. But from other crimes that I've even kind of looked into, mm-hmm. I would even say I think this one with running gematria and just even with some of the things that Catcher on the Rye matched.
Oh yeah.
This one is really, really interesting to me. There was some really weird matches and just some of the names.
Well, when you get the matches of not only the names but the dates and the time distances, 44 weeks between their birthdays, which is something I learned from a gematria guy on YouTube. He checks date stuff constantly. That is harder to do, but it is often very revealing. When I saw 44 weeks, 44 episodes, 22 in each season, episode 33, which was the 11th of season 2, was about it's my party and I'll kill if I want to.
Yeah.
I was sold on the idea that there was much more to this than met the eye.
Yeah. One thing I was going to ask you, and I read also this too, and it just may have just been something but that Rebecca lived at Laurel Canyon before she moved down to West Hollywood. Mm-hmm. And then that's when everything kind of started to align with Bardo. Is that true that she lived at Laurel Canyon for a while?
I have not seen that.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't see that. I wouldn't be
surprised. I think it was she was when they were filming My Sister Sam. I believe that's when she had lived there.
Well, that's interesting then, if that was the case.
Yeah.
Yeah, really.
That's weird. Laurel Canyon.
But the whole mountain, you know what I mean? The whole mountain, goat, how it all kind of just ties
together. Mountain out there. That's another side.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, the mountain. The mountain was so. It's such a story of Capricorn is that ascent into power and the ambition, and they are very hardworking people. I'm not saying they are all corrupt and then they're going to meet their fall or meet the abyss, but it just was so descriptive. And then it turns out that the goat is not a full goat. The goat has a fishtail, which is the flip side of going up the mountain. You crash, you fall into the ocean, you fall into the abyss. And applying it, then thinking of the Capricorns, famous Capricorns, Tiger Woods kind of had a crash. Nixon, of course, Elvis. It's always something hugely dramatic. Other people of other signs may fail. When the Capricorn falls from power, it's because he spent so many years acquiring that it's dramatic when it happens. It's like overnight almost, just falls off the mountain. And that symbology was so true of Rebecca, which it wasn't her fault. And Robert, I don't know who intercepted him along his path. I believe somebody did. And then he fell. Can be coerced, it can be organic. I don't really know, that it necessarily is one way or the other. But that was what pretty much got me. And it's Capricorn was strong in the Idaho 4. It was for a different reason, because it was government and big business. But behind this is still government and big business. The profiting from when a stalker commits a murder is fantastic. So it's still government and big business.
Yeah.
That's the sign of Capricorn. And then we get the other signs we get Scorpio with Chapman, which is a sign of, not to offend the Scorpios in the audience, a sign of murder and death. And please bear in mind, these signs are crime astrology, which is black and white. It is not natal astrology. It doesn't mean Scorpios are going to all be murderers. It's a different way of looking at the same energies. So, but we get into Scorpio. Actually, Bardo had Scorpio rising. I don't know what Rebecca had, because I don't have her time of birth. I can only look at certain things in her chart, but I saw enough to see the Mars-Venus sexual lust attraction and the stalking aspect that got her in the end. But when we get to Chapman, we have Scorpio, and that'll be a whole nother story. And then Catcher in the Rye. And guess whose birthday is the day before Robert John Bardo's? J.D. Salinger. He's born January 1st. Another Capricorn in the mix.
Was Dahmer one?
Do you know his birth date?
I don't know. I don't know if
I think he was a Scorpio.
there was something I was his name. I didn't mention it before. I don't remember what it was under, but his name did come up in one of the other things I was running before.
Well, Park Dietz also did Jeffrey Dahmer's court testimony as well. That's if you wanted a link.
Yeah, I don't have my thing here. I can't check. I will check that about Dahmer, because for some reason I'm feeling him a Scorpio. I don't know.
He was born May 21st, 1960.
Oh, wow. He is a Gemini, Taurus Gemini. Whoa, that's interesting. Taurus. Now I'd have to look at the whole. I haven't done Dahmer. I tend not to do the multiple murderer guys, because there's so many charts involved and so much. And I got sick of hearing about Dahmer, because that's all you tend to hear about. Dahmer and Bundy. So I've shied away from those guys. I mean, I'm not saying I wouldn't do them. I would certainly work on them if the case arose. But I tend to like to focus more intently on one or two incidents, because you can build on that. I mean, you build on this going backward into Chapman and then Hinckley. And when we get around to it, I kept seeing Sam all over the place. Son of Sam Carr, Sam the dog. And he used a Charter Arms as well, but it was a 44 caliber. He's called the 44 caliber killer. But the 44 caliber revolver, the nickname was Bulldog. So you have another dog in there. You have dogs all over the place. Oh, and this is funny. I'll just let this is a spoiler alert on The Catcher in the Rye, but this is so funny. In 2020, the Disney Studios proposed to make a movie based on The Catcher in the Rye. But they weren't going to have a guy playing Holden Caulfield. It was going to be an animation with German Shepherds.
Oh, how convenient.
Something like that, too.
How were they going to pull that off? An animation with German Shepherds about a complete PSYOP manual. I mean, just crazy. It's just so funny. The stuff never ends.
This is definitely a really interesting one, and I think you even said the next one's probably even going to be wilder. So I mean, I can't even imagine.
For sure.
I thought this was, especially like I said, just with the numerical value of certain things matching. I just thought it was so bizarre with this.
That was pretty much all I needed to see.
That was very impressive.
Like, it was like really worth pursuing this one. And then it's like I said, the back into Chapman was a lot easier to do, having what I know now.
All right. Do you want to let everybody know where they could find your stuff one more time before we wrap it up?
Sure thing. I'm on Twitter and Instagram, and my link tree is hopefully in the description below. I have some books on Amazon, and my website is strangebuttruecrime.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And I will, like I said, I will leave you your links in the bottom. I think I have some stuff for your books as well. Yeah, and thank you everybody who jumped in on the chat as well. There was tons of great comments in there. I really appreciate that. That's why I go live. Lisa, of course. Thank you very much. Yeah. I really look forward to part 2, and I guess a little bit of a spoiler alert. Well, I'm not trying to put BD on the spot either. I mean, if she's able to do it, but we are going to be like working on I think like a 2 or 3 part series of the smiley face killers.
Right.
And I already think that one's going to be really, really, really interesting. But we will also be possibly taking a look at the astrology, the way that BD does it.
Yeah.
We're going to get her some of the victims, and we're hoping to. I think this will be a rather impressive smiley face killers series. Not to pat myself on the back, but I just think with the people I'm working with and the combinations that I'll have, I think this will actually be one of the better maybe looks at it of some of the newer cases as well. So keep an eye out for that eventually. But thank you very much again. I love it. You send me the slides, you give me a name for the episode, and you sit here and you cover you cover it very thorough. So I really, really, really do appreciate it. I mean, you're a podcaster.
I love doing the work. I really do. It's just something that I'm really devoted to, and it's not work actually. I just have fun with this stuff.
But you're definitely a podcaster's dream guest. I'll tell you.
Phenomenal work. Phenomenal researcher.
Thank you.
Phenomenal.
All right, so I'm going to wrap it up there. And, this will stay out for a while, and then it'll redrop everywhere else. And until the next one, everybody be well.
All right.
Later.
Bye.